For a person living with brain cancer, might I add, you look incredibly healthy.
Probably a good place to start is that in 2015, Belle Gibson had reached incredible fame already on the back of a miracle story of curing a malignant brain tumour that had spread to other organs throughout her body using healthy eating instead of conventional medicine.
I'm going to get tested for ovarian cancer. I no longer have cancer in my uterus. Woohoo! Really amazing. I don't think I'm going to die tomorrow, but my body is dying.
She'd amassed hundreds of thousands of online followers. She had turned that story into a wellness empire called The Whole Pantry, which included developing one of Apple's most popular health and wellness apps at the time, and a best-selling cookbook published by Penguin. But Beau and I had absolutely no idea who Belle Gibson was.
Before The Age, Nick and I both worked for the local papers in Melbourne, and my editor was Eileen Berry, who became a friend. And one day she came to me and she said, "Have you heard of Belle Gibson? She's this young, successful app developer and she's faking cancer, and I know someone who's in her inner circle and who wants to expose her." So I thought, right, okay, that doesn't sound like an allegation or a story that I could ever stand up. But I took the number of this friend and she struck me as someone who was very intelligent and who was just horrified really for the role she had played in supporting Belle Gibson, who she now believed was a cancer faker. So the first thing I did was I went to Instagram and I looked Belle Gibson up. I looked at what she'd been saying, and I very quickly noticed that everything, including her health claims, were either really vague or totally inconsistent or just seemingly implausible.
I mean, you go into extraordinary details. I had surgery about 7 hours ago. The doctor comes in and tells me the draining failed and I went into cardiac arrest and died for just under 3 minutes. I had the most intense bruising from the paddles when they electrocuted me back to consciousness. Minus the wires and constant throwing up of blood. Anyway, the procedure failed and I died.
We were hoping to write an initial article which would have said something like, "There are doubts about Belle Gibson's diagnosis." But none of her friends who we were speaking to at that point were prepared to speak on the record. So Beau and I then thought, well, if she's lying about this, then what else is she lying about? And she was also claiming at that point to be giving large parts of all her profits away to various charitable organisations. So we started looking into that angle, and it really didn't take long for that to start unraveling. So that was a story that we knew we could write.
At first, like there always was with Belle Gibson, there was a huge outpouring of support for her. But then things turned and people started asking why she hadn't donated money raised for charity and how charitable donations get mixed up in a business's cash flow. And what then happened within, I guess, an hour or so was what we had expected. And that was that people would start openly questioning her cancer diagnosis and her claims of eating healthily and beating metastasized terminal brain cancer. Other publications then jumped on the story, and it really opened the door for us to publish on the doubts that we'd already, heard about from her friends and from doctors.
Well, the next story that Beau and I wrote in The Age was something along the lines of friends and doctors cast doubt over Healing Belle's cancer claims. Healing Belle was the Instagram moniker she used. In that article, we were able to quote sources from her inner circle saying they doubted her cancer claims. We were able to mention the fact that she was being openly questioned on her various social media pages about her diagnosis and had been deleting posts. And we got the all clear to publish quotes from a leading neurosurgeon, Dr. Andrew Kay, who we'd spoke to, who said something along the lines of, this would be more than a 1 in a million case, it would be a 1 in 100 million. From there, things snowballed very, very quickly for Belle. Penguin, her publisher, went into crisis mode and before long began pulling her book from bookshelves and pulping copies of it. Apple refused to say anything. They pretended like they didn't know her. They wouldn't comment to us or to other publications at all. Belle Gibson, she went to ground and resurfaced about a month later, having hired a crisis PR manager and agreed to a sit-down interview with the Australian Women's Weekly. Not long after that, she was paid $75,000 to agree to an on-camera interview with Tara Brown at 60 Minutes, which goes down in the history books as one of the biggest train wreck interviews of all time.
I stopped the chemotherapy for various reasons. I didn't know.
Truth, Belle, truth.
Tara, I'm trying to draw on information.
No, don't draw on information. Just be honest.
I am being
Please be
honest with you.
I'm trying to be open to what you're saying, but you were just muddying the waters.
We delved into her childhood and we learned that she had a very troubled childhood and that she told lies about her health from a very young age. The other thing is, I think by the time Belle Gibson started the app, she was a young broke single mum living in a new city.
We've been working every day on our Apple Watch app, and it's been hard.
She was definitely vulnerable, and I would say that she's probably always been vulnerable. That said, a lot of people are vulnerable or have had difficult childhoods and they don't go on to become a cancer scammer. Consumer Affairs did launch an investigation and they ended up taking her to the Federal Court of Australia. So she was fined more than $400,000 in the end. Nick and I have over the years checked in with Consumer Affairs Victoria to get an update on that fine. The last meaningful update that we got from the agency was towards the end of 2023 when they said that the fine was still outstanding. And I followed up and I asked how much of the fine was still outstanding, and they said the entire fine.
The authorities have told us you haven't paid a cent, Belle. What sort of message does this send to people?
The other side of it, I mean, she has been held to account in public. She's gone through one of the biggest public shamings in Australia that I can recall. Her reputation is completely shot. I think the fact that she's managed to sort of wriggle out of actually paying back some of the money that she earned from this scam would infuriate the people who followed her. Penguin paid $30,000 and they've got to include that disclaimer in their books that contain health advice. But Apple has really escaped this scot-free as the world's most valuable company who backed her and handpicked her to have her app as one of only 12 on the first Apple Watch alongside Nike and Pinterest and Twitter. I mean, I think it's a cop-out. I think it's a cop-out.
It's been a whirlwind, and that's also, we're really emotional and proud about it, and I have a feeling now that Australia's waking up, that they're spotting it. The text messages and the Instagram comments and the tweets are coming in saying, did we just spot your icon on the new Apple Watch? And you did, and it's exciting.
She hasn't been much heard from since the conclusion of the federal court case against her, which found her guilty in 2018. She pops up here and there. She ingratiated herself with an African community in Melbourne at one point. The TV news crew ambushed her at a petrol station.
Belle Gibson, it's Sam Cucchiara from A Current Affair.
Hi.
And asked her why she hadn't paid her outstanding federal court penalty.
Just like to ask you one question, why you haven't paid the fine, why you haven't paid a cent of the fine.
That was the last time we've seen her. She's keeping a relatively low profile these days. What I'd like to think would be a lasting impact of the highly public rise and fall of Belle Gibson is that people might apply greater scrutiny to these sorts of miracle cure claims when they're presented on Instagram. Because, there's nothing wrong with eating healthy and doing yoga or whatever it might be, but the real dark side of the wellness industry is often found on places like Instagram, where it's espousing do this instead of conventional medicine at the expense of conventional therapies. That's still there, but yeah, I guess we hope that people will apply greater scrutiny